Captain Ilara Zane stood at the helm of the Lysandra, gazing out through the viewport at the swirling vortex in space. The wormhole, it had appeared out of nowhere, a perfect anomaly that had beckoned them with promises of untold riches, resources, and shortcuts to uncharted territories. It was a miracle, a gift to humanity, something that could push civilization into the stars at an unprecedented pace. Her voice was calm but filled with excitement as she addressed her crew. "This is it, team. A wormhole like nothing we've seen before. We're on the brink of something historic." Lieutenant Kieran Holt, who had always been skeptical of such unproven wonders, glanced uneasily at the swirling mass. "Captain, are we sure about this? We've never encountered anything like this before." Captain Zane smiled reassuringly, though her mind raced. She had been in command of the Lysandra for over 5 years and had seen her fair share of anomalies. But this felt different. It felt promising. The scans show stability. We're going to be the first to witness what's on the other side. As the Lysandra inched closer to the rift, the crew worked with precision. The humming of the ship's engines and the clicking of controls filled the air. Ilara leaned forward in her seat, studying the data streaming across the monitors. "It's opening," Kieran murmured, eyes wide. The wormhole's vortex seemed to breathe, as though alive, undulating and shifting. And then, without warning, it grew larger. "Prepare for immediate entry," Captain Zane ordered. The ship's systems adapted seamlessly to the change in gravitational forces as they crossed the threshold. But as they entered, something unexpected happened. The ship's lights flickered, and the instruments began to malfunction. Kieran's heart raced as he scrambled to stabilize the ship. "Captain, we're not just crossing a rift. It's pulling us in." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Shut down all non-essential systems. We can't risk it pulling us too far." Suddenly, a strange distortion filled the communication channels. A faint whisper echoed through the ship. It was a voice, distorted and broken, but undeniably human. "Get out. You must escape." Kieran turned to her, disbelief on his face. Did you hear that?" Ilara's heart skipped a beat. "We're not alone in here." She felt an eerie chill crawl up her spine. "Something's waiting for us on the other side." Dr. Ivor Celine stood in the cargo hold of the Lysandra, surrounded by the oddities that had been brought back from their first exploratory mission to the nearby planet. The planet, designated Sci-fi, had shown signs of past life, an ancient civilization that had long since vanished. As an expert in forgotten histories and alien artifacts, Ivor was eager to uncover the secrets of the planet. Alongside him was Lieutenant Azra Tan, a skilled archaeologist who had an eye for detail. Azra wiped the sweat from her brow as she examined the first artifact they had uncovered, a large stone slab covered in intricate symbols and patterns. "These markings, I've never seen anything like this before," she muttered, running her fingers across the surface. Ivor leaned closer, adjusting his glasses as he examined the symbols. "They're definitely not of any known civilization. This could be something from before the rise of the galactic empires, something older." Azra's eyes widened. "Are we talking about a pre-Universal War civilization? That would make this place incredibly significant." Ivor nodded gravely. "Exactly. And if these markings are any indication, this civilization wasn't just advanced, it was lethal." The two of them spent the next several hours deciphering the inscriptions, piecing together their meaning. What they uncovered sent a chill through both of them. The markings spoke of a race with a singular mission, to exterminate entire populations to create a perfect galaxy. The relics they found suggested that the creators of the wormhole, the ones who had left behind the traces of their civilization on Sci-fi, had perfected a method of controlling gateways to other worlds. As they dug deeper into the ruins, they discovered more artifacts that seemed to hint at a terrifying truth. These ancient beings had used the wormhole to conquer and erase entire civilizations, and the markings seemed to indicate that humanity had been marked as their next target. "This can't be a coincidence," Ezra whispered. "The same technology that created the wormhole is what allowed them to wipe out entire species. Are we next?" Ivor's mind raced. "We have to warn Captain Zane. If humanity is truly their next target, we need to prepare." They quickly sent a message to the Lysandra, but the response that came back was chilling. The ship's sensors had detected a large fleet emerging from the other side of the wormhole, an army of unknown vessels, likely controlled by the ancient race. "What have we stumbled upon?" Ezra whispered, horrified. The wormhole wasn't a gift. It was a trap. Ovor and Azra left the ruins of the ancient civilization, their minds heavy with the realization of what they had uncovered. They had hoped to find answers, but what they discovered instead was the impending doom of humanity. Sergeant Quinn Blackwood paced in the cold, dimly lit halls of the military base on the uncharted moon, his mind racing. The threat from the wormhole, and the ancient alien race waiting within it, had become all too real. The mysterious fleet was drawing closer, and they had no idea what kind of weapons or technologies the enemy would bring. Worse still, reports were coming in from the crew that a strange illness had begun to spread through the base. Lieutenant Nix Rada stood nearby, keeping a vigilant eye on the quarantine zone. Her sharp gaze scanned the room, her military instincts never allowing her to let her guard down. "Sergeant, we've got another one." Lieutenant Magnus, showing signs of the infection, she reported, her voice filled with concern but firm. Quinn grimaced. "Damn it. That makes 5 this week. It's spreading faster than we can contain it." His fingers gripped the edge of the console as he stared at the data scrolling in front of him. The symptoms were strange, unlike any biological threat they had encountered before. The infected were exhibiting extreme fever, confusion, and an almost compulsive behavior to leave the base, as though drawn by something invisible. The doctors couldn't find a cure, and the infection was resistant to all known treatments. "What's causing it?" Quinn asked, turning to Nix. "We think it might be something from the other side of the wormhole," Nix replied, her voice tight with worry. "There's a report of an alien strain that was detected on one of the ships that emerged from the rift. It's highly contagious." Quinn frowned, his thoughts heavy with dread. Could this be a weapon? Something they're using to weaken us before their fleet arrives? "It's possible," Nix said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "But we don't know for sure. Whatever it is, it's not just biological. It's psychological. The infected are becoming different, erratic." Quinn's eyes narrowed. "Get me Dr. Iden Voss. If this is a bioweapon, we need to understand it now." Dr. Iden Voss was the base's top bioengineer, and Quinn trusted him to get to the bottom of the strange infection. Voss worked tirelessly in his lab, poring over the genetic data of the pathogen. His face was pale, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he scanned the microscope. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up, eyes wide with alarm. "This isn't a natural disease," Voss said, his voice tremulous. "This pathogen, it's engineered." "Engineered? By who?" Quinn demanded, stepping closer. "The signatures, they're like nothing I've ever seen before. It's a combination of alien biology and human genetic material," Voss explained, his hand shaking as he adjusted the microscope. "It's almost as if someone, or something, designed it to specifically target our species." Quinn's blood ran cold. "So they've been planning this all along?" Voss nodded grimly. "It's not just an infection. It's a weapon. A psychological weapon. The infected aren't just sick. They're being influenced. Their minds are being overridden by something." "Something from the wormhole?" Nix asked, her voice filled with dread. Voss nodded again. "Exactly. We don't fully understand it yet, but it seems like the pathogen is part of the ancient race's arsenal. They'd been manipulating the wormhole to send us this virus. It's a psychological control mechanism, designed to break us down before they strike. Quinn turned away, his mind whirling. So they're not just coming with weapons. They're coming with something to break us before they even fight us. We need to find a cure, and fast. Meanwhile, in the quarantine zones, the situation was spiraling out of control. The infected were becoming more violent, more erratic. They began to ignore orders, to lash out at anyone who came too close. Some of them even tried to escape the base, drawn by some unseen force, as if the wormhole itself was calling them. Quinn knew they were running out of time. He had to act fast. If they couldn't stop the spread of the infection, the ancient race would have already won without ever firing a shot. But with every minute that passed, more and more of the base's personnel fell ill. "We need to lock down the entire base," Quinn said, his voice firm as he made his decision. "No one gets in or out until we have a solution." Nix nodded. "Understood. I'll get the security teams on it." Quinn's mind raced with plans, but he knew the clock was ticking. Humanity's executioners weren't just an alien fleet. They were something much worse, and they were closer than they'd ever imagined. The Lysandra had once been a symbol of humanity's resilience, a state-of-the-art vessel designed to defend the colony against any external threat. Now, as it drifted through the darkness of space, it felt like a vessel of hope teetering on the edge of annihilation. Captain Ileana Foster stood at the helm, staring out into the void. The approaching fleet, born from the depths of the wormhole, was only hours away. The entire crew was on high alert, and they had no idea what they were up against. They had no idea how to fight the infected, and even worse, they didn't know the full extent of the alien race's power. "Captain," Lieutenant Jarek Horan, the ship's tactical officer, said, his voice strained, "We've detected more ships emerging from the wormhole. We're estimating a fleet of at least 50 ships, all war-ready." Ileana's stomach dropped. The wormhole had not only been a rift in space, but a doorway to a predatory civilization that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. Humanity had been caught in the crossfire. "How much time do we have?" Ileana asked, trying to mask the panic in her voice. "We've got maybe 3 hours before they're in range," Jarek replied. "We can't fight them all. We don't have the firepower." Ileana clenched her fists. The Lysandra wasn't a military ship. It was a colony vessel, meant to transport people to new worlds, not face down an alien invasion. But they had no choice. She couldn't abandon humanity's future. They had already lost contact with Sci-fi, the first world to make contact with the wormhole, and she couldn't afford to lose any more. "I'm not going to let them just wipe us out," Ileana muttered, her gaze hardening. "We fight. All hands on deck. Whatever we have, we use." Jarek gave a nod of acknowledgement, though the uncertainty in his eyes was palpable. He didn't believe they stood a chance, but he would follow his captain's orders. Meanwhile, Dr. Ivor Celine and Lieutenant Ezra Tan were racing against time to stop the spread of the infection aboard the Lysandra. They had found a partial cure, but it wasn't enough. The infected were still becoming more aggressive, more violent, and the virus seemed to mutate every time they tried to halt it. What they needed was more time, but time was something they didn't have. "We need to analyze the virus core structure, not just the symptoms," Ivor said, pacing frantically in the medical bay. "If we can disrupt the genetic coding, we might be able to stop it." Ezra was typing rapidly at the terminal, analyzing samples taken from the infected. "We don't have enough data, Dr. Celine. Every time we think we understand it, it adapts." "I know," Ivor admitted, frustration evident in his voice. "But we don't have the luxury of failure. If we can't find a solution, everyone aboard the ship is going to fall." Ezra shook her head, her face pale. "I've seen the way they look at us now. It's not just the virus. It's like they've been changed, like they're under some kind of control." Ivor stopped, looking at Ezra. "You're right," he said slowly. "What if the virus isn't the only weapon? What if it's part of a larger psychological control system? Something orchestrated by the beings who created the wormhole?" The realization hit them both like a thunderclap. The virus wasn't just biological. It was a mind control device. The infected weren't just sick. They were being manipulated, their behavior guided by something more sinister. "We need to shut it down, Azra," Ivor said urgently. "We can't let it spread any further. If we don't break the control, we're all doomed." Back in the command center, Captain Foster's thoughts were racing. Her crew was battling an infection they couldn't fully understand, and now, an enemy fleet of unknown ships was closing in fast. She had no idea how many had been infected or how many had succumbed to the virus, but the ship was becoming a ticking time bomb. "Captain," Jarek said, pulling her from her thoughts, "we have incoming communications from the fleet. It's a message." "Put it through," Eliana ordered, her tone firm. The screen flickered, revealing a single alien figure. It was tall, with an elongated face and glowing eyes, impossibly alien. The voice that followed chilled her to the bone. "You have been chosen," the alien spoke in a smooth, almost melodic tone. "We, the Tharvik, have witnessed the rise of your species. You are a threat, and your existence is no longer necessary. Surrender, or we will exterminate you all." Ileana's blood ran cold. She had heard stories of the Tharvik, a race that had mastered wormhole technology and used it to annihilate civilizations across the galaxy. And now, they had set their sights on humanity. "We will never surrender," Ileana said, her voice steadied despite the rising panic. "We will fight." The alien's eyes flickered, and the transmission ended abruptly. Ileana turned to Jarek, her resolve hardening. "Prepare for battle. Every weapon we've got, we use. Let them come." As the fleet of Tharvik ships closed in, the Lysandra fired its first shot, an explosion of energy cutting through the vacuum of space. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. Inside the ship, Dr. Ivor Celine and Lieutenant Ezra Tan worked feverishly. Using every scrap of knowledge, they had to stop the infection from claiming any more lives. But it wasn't enough, yet. In this desperate moment, humanity's fate rested not only on the strength of their military, but on the fragile hope that they could outsmart their invaders, heal their sick, and find a way to survive the wrath of the Tharvik. The battle was just beginning.